She pretends to be a CEO's wife at the hospital when he's in a coma after a terrible accident, unaware that her gentle voice and stories of a life they never shared would bring him back from the edge of death. One desperate lie, one miraculous awakening, and a connection that would challenge everything they thought they knew about second chances. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital buzzed overhead as Emily Parker slumped into the hard plastic chair of the waiting room. Her scrubs were stained with coffee from a 12-hour shift at the café across the street, her hair falling from its once neat ponytail. It was nearly midnight, but sleep was the furthest thing from her mind. "Please, I need to see my brother," she pleaded with the nurse at the reception desk. "Jason Parker. He was brought in earlier today after a car accident." The nurse typed something into her computer, her expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry, but visiting hours ended at 8. Only immediate family, spouses, parents are allowed in the ICU after hours." Emily's heart sank. She'd only learned about Jason's accident when her shift ended, rushing over without even changing. Now, she couldn't even see him. "But I'm his sister," Emily insisted, her voice cracking. "He doesn't have anyone else. Our parents passed away years ago." The nurse's expression remained sympathetic but firm. "I understand, but hospital policy is clear. You can come back tomorrow at 9 when visiting hours begin." Emily was about to protest again when she overheard two doctors talking as they passed. "The CEO from Thornhill Industries," one said. "Terrible accident on the highway. Been unconscious since they brought him in." "Any family?" asked the other. "None that we could reach. His emergency contact is his assistant, but she's overseas. No wife, no kids. It's a shame. These cases often respond better when family is present." Emily froze. Thornhill Industries. That was Jason's company. Not his own, but where he worked in middle management. The CEO had been in an accident the same day? A wild, desperate idea formed in her mind before she could think better of it. She approached the reception desk again, this time standing taller despite her exhaustion. "Excuse me, I need to see my husband, Alexander Thornhill. I just heard he was brought in after an accident." The nurse looked up, surprised. "Mr. Thornhill? You're his wife?" Emily's heart hammered in her chest, but she nodded firmly. "Yes, I was out of town and just got back. Please, I need to see him." The nurse studied her for a moment, taking in her coffee-stained scrubs, her disheveled appearance, and Emily was certain she would be caught in her lie. But then the woman's expression softened. "Of course, Mrs. Thornhill. I'll have someone take you to him right away. The doctors will want to speak with you." Guilt gnawed at Emily as she followed another nurse down the sterile hallway, but she pushed it aside. She just needed to see Jason, to make sure he was all right. Then she'd come clean. But when the nurse led her not to Jason's room, but to a private suite at the end of the ICU corridor, Emily realized her terrible mistake. This wasn't her brother's room. Before she could confess, the nurse opened the door. "Dr. Mercer, Mrs. Thornhill is here," the nurse announced. The doctor looked up from the bedside of a man Emily had never seen before. Tall, even lying down, with strong features and dark hair now partially concealed by bandages. Machines beeped steadily around him, tubes and wires connecting his still form to various monitors. "Mrs. Thornhill, thank you for coming so quickly," Dr. Mercer said, extending his hand. "I'm the neurologist overseeing your husband's care." Emily shook his hand weakly, panic rising in her throat. She'd made a terrible mistake, but how could she explain it now? And what about Jason? Where was he? How is he? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stable, but still unconscious. The head trauma was significant, but the swelling has begun to subside. These first 48 hours are critical." Emily nodded, her mind racing. She needed to find Jason, but she couldn't just walk out now. The doctor was looking at her expectantly, compassionately. "Would you like a moment alone with him?" Dr. Mercer asked. "Talk to him. Research suggests coma patients can often hear, even when they can't respond. Familiar voices can be extraordinarily therapeutic. "Yes, thank you," Emily said, seeing her chance to be alone and figure out what to do. When the doctor left, Emily approached the bed cautiously, studying the stranger's face. Alexander Thornhill, the name she'd seen in the local business pages and heard mentioned at the café where she worked. The CEO of Thornhill Industries, a tech company that had revitalized their struggling Midwestern city over the past decade. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, not to the unconscious man, but to the universe at large for her deception. "I just need to find my brother." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She turned to leave but hesitated at the door. Something about the stillness of the man, the absolute solitude of his room, no flowers, no cards, no personal items, made her pause. The doctors had said he had no family present, no one waiting, no one speaking to him. Almost against her will, Emily found herself returning to his bedside and sitting in the chair beside him. "I don't know you, Mr. Thornhill," she said softly. "And I shouldn't be here. But while I am, maybe you could use a friend." She began to talk, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence as the one-sided conversation eased her own anxiety. She told him about her day at the café, about the regular customers with their predictable orders, about her dream of someday opening her own bookstore café. "My brother Jason works for your company, actually," she found herself saying. "He's always telling me what a brilliant visionary you are, though between us, he also says you could stand to smile more in the office." Emily thought she saw the faintest flicker of movement in his face, but when she looked more closely, everything was still. A nurse came in to check his vitals, smiling approvingly at Emily. "It's good you're talking to him. Some people find it uncomfortable, but it really does help." After the nurse left, Emily stood. "I should go. I need to find my brother." But as she reached the door, Dr. Mercer returned with another doctor. "Mrs. Thornhill, this is Dr. Patel, our chief of neurosurgery. We'd like to discuss your husband's treatment plan." Trapped in her lie, Emily had no choice but to nod and stay. As the doctors explained Alexander's condition in detail, the brain trauma, the surgery they'd performed, the cautious prognosis, Emily's concern for this stranger grew alongside her worry for Jason. "Has anyone been able to locate his brother?" she asked, remembering how the nurse had mentioned an emergency contact overseas. "Brother?" Dr. Mercer looked confused. "Our records show Mr. Thornhill has no siblings." "I meant his assistant," Emily quickly corrected. "The emergency contact. Ms. Walsh is trying to get a flight back from Tokyo, but it may be several days," Dr. Patel explained. "Until then, your presence here is invaluable. Talk to him, hold his hand, remind him of your life together. Those connections can sometimes provide a path back to consciousness. Their life together." Emily felt sick with guilt, but what could she do? If she confessed now, they might ban her from the hospital entirely, and she still hadn't found Jason. After the doctors left, a different nurse came in. "Mrs. Thornhill, would you like me to check if your brother was admitted today? Jason Parker, correct? I overheard you mention him earlier." Emily's relief was overwhelming. "Yes, please. He was in an accident this morning." The nurse returned 10 minutes later. "He's on the 3rd floor. Broken leg and some facial lacerations, but nothing life-threatening. He's sleeping now, but you can see him first thing tomorrow." Knowing Jason was safe loosened the knot in Emily's chest. She should leave now, come back tomorrow during regular visiting hours. But as she looked at Alexander Thornhill's still form, she found herself unable to abandon him. "I'll stay a little longer," she told the nurse. "If that's all right." "Of course. I'll bring you a blanket and some tea. These chairs aren't comfortable, but they recline a bit." Left alone again with Alexander, Emily settled back into the chair and continued talking. She told him about the book she was reading, about the changing leaves in the park across from her apartment, about nothing and everything. "I should tell you the truth," she finally said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not your wife. I don't even know you. I lied to get in here because I was desperate to see my brother. I should leave, but—" She paused, realizing how strange it was to feel responsible for this stranger. "But it doesn't seem right that you're alone." The night deepened around them, the hospital quieting except for the steady beeping of machines and the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes in the hallway. Emily dozed off in the chair, waking with a start when a nurse came to check Alexander's vitals at 3 a.m. "You should get some real sleep," the nurse suggested. "There's a cot we can bring in." Emily nodded gratefully, and soon she was lying on a narrow cot beside Alexander's bed, watching the rise and fall of his chest in the dim light. "Good night, Mr. Thornhill," she whispered. "I hope you find your way back." Morning came with the bustle of shift changes and the arrival of a new neurologist. Emily freshened up in the small bathroom attached to the suite, splashing water on her face and trying to make herself presentable. She'd have to leave soon to see Jason, to explain her absence, to change her clothes. But first she had one more conversation with the unconscious CEO. "I have to go soon," she told him, sitting on the edge of her chair. "I need to see my brother and tell him what happened. And I should probably come clean to your doctors about who I really am." She sighed. "I don't know why I'm still talking to you. Maybe because you're a better listener than most conscious people I know." She smiled sadly at her own joke, then reached out and tentatively touched his hand. It was warm, the skin smooth except for a callus on his thumb. "I hope someone who actually knows you comes soon, someone who can tell you real stories about your life, remind you of who you are and why you should wake up." Her voice caught unexpectedly. Everyone deserves to have someone waiting when they open their eyes. A soft knock at the door made her quickly withdraw her hand. Dr. Mercer entered, accompanied by a team of residents. "Good morning, Mrs. Thornhill. We're going to run some tests, check his responsiveness. Sometimes having a loved one present during these assessments can make a difference." Emily nodded, moving aside to let them work. She watched as they checked his pupils, tested various reflexes, called his name. No response. "Alexander," Dr. Mercer said firmly, "can you hear me? If you can, try to squeeze my hand." Nothing. The doctor turned to Emily, sometimes a familiar voice. "I should try?" Emily asked, her heart racing. Dr. Mercer nodded encouragingly. Emily moved closer to the bed, aware of all the eyes on her. This was the moment her deception would be exposed. Alexander wouldn't respond to her. Why would he? She was nobody to him, but she had to try, for appearance's sake if nothing else. "Alexander," she said softly, taking his hand. It's me. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand." For one eternal second, nothing happened. Then, so faintly she thought she might have imagined it, she felt the slightest pressure against her fingers. "He squeezed my hand," she gasped, looking up at Dr. Mercer. "I felt it." The doctor leaned forward, excitement in his eyes. "Mr. Thornhill, can you do that again?" This time, the movement was definite enough that everyone saw his fingers curl slightly. "That's remarkable," Dr. Mercer said, his professional demeanor briefly giving way to genuine amazement. "Keep talking to him, Mrs. Thornhill. Your voice is reaching him." Emily's mind raced. It had to be coincidence. There was no reason Alexander Thornhill would respond to her voice above the doctor's, but she couldn't deny what had happened. "Alexander," she continued, her voice stronger now, "we're all here waiting for you. The doctors are taking good care of you." His eyelids fluttered almost imperceptibly. "Did you see that?" one of the residents whispered. Dr. Mercer nodded, making notes on his tablet. "Continue, Mrs. Thornhill. This is very encouraging." Emily squeezed Alexander's hand gently. "You're safe," she told him. "Just rest and heal. But if you can, show us you're still in there." His eyelids fluttered again, and this time they opened just a crack before closing again. The room erupted in barely contained excitement. Dr. Mercer quickly checked Alexander's vital signs and neurological indicators. "This is remarkable progress," he told Emily. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. His brain activity has increased significantly just in the last few minutes." Emily nodded, stunned by what was happening. As the medical team continued their assessment, she found herself wondering about the man whose hand she was holding. Who was Alexander Thornhill, really? What kind of life did he lead, and why had he responded to her, a complete stranger, when he hadn't responded to the doctors? "I need to check on my brother," she told Dr. Mercer once the examination was complete, "but I'll come back soon." "Of course. This development is extremely positive, Mrs. Thornhill. Your husband is fighting his way back." "My husband?" The word sent a strange flutter through Emily's chest. This charade had gone far enough. She needed to tell the truth. "Dr. Mercer, there's something I should—" But before she could continue, alarms began blaring from Alexander's monitors. His body tensed, back arching slightly off the bed. "He's seizing," Dr. Mercer called out. "Get Crash Cart in here! Mrs. Thornhill, I need you to step outside." Emily found herself ushered into the hallway as medical personnel rushed into the room. She stood there, trembling, unsure what to do. Had she somehow caused this? Had her deception somehow harmed him? After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Dr. Mercer emerged, looking tired but relieved. "He's stabilized," he told Emily. "This type of setback isn't uncommon with traumatic brain injuries. But I'm concerned about the timing. Were you about to leave when it happened?" Emily nodded, speechless. "It could be coincidence," Dr. Mercer said thoughtfully. "But given his earlier response to you, I wonder if on some level he was distressed by your departure." "That's not possible," Emily said, finding her voice. "He doesn't even know me." Dr. Mercer smiled kindly. "The brain is a mysterious organ, Mrs. Thornhill. Conscious or not, it seems your husband knows when you're near. And right now, that connection might be his best chance for recovery." Emily felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. How had a simple lie to check on her brother turned into this? And how could she possibly tell the truth now? "Can I see my brother first? I promise I'll come right back." "Of course, but please, don't be gone long." Emily made her way to the third floor, her mind a storm of confusion, guilt, and inexplicable connection to the man she'd left in the ICU. When she found Jason's room, he was awake, his leg elevated in a cast, bruises darkening one side of his face. "Em!" he exclaimed when she entered. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." "Me worried about you?" She laughed, tears springing to her eyes as she hugged him carefully. "You're the one who decided to test if your car could stop on a dime." "Not my finest decision," he admitted, wincing as he shifted. "But I've been calling you since I woke up. The nurses said you weren't on the visitor list." Emily sat on the edge of his bed, deciding honesty was the best approach. "That's because I spent the night in Alexander Thornhill's room." Jason's eyes widened. "You what? Not like that." Emily hurriedly explained the mix-up, the lie, and the strange events of the morning. "And now I'm trapped, Jason. They think I'm his wife, and he's responding to my voice when he wouldn't respond to anyone else's." Jason listened, his expression moving from shock to disbelief to something like wonder. "You have to tell them the truth," he said finally. "I know, but what if it sets back his recovery? What if that seizure really was because I was leaving?" Jason reached for her hand. "Em, you can't take responsibility for a stranger's medical condition. It's not fair to you, and honestly, it's not fair to him either. What happens when he wakes up and finds out his wife is actually a café barista he's never met?" Emily knew he was right, but something held her back. The memory of Alexander's hand twitching in hers, his eyelids fluttering at the sound of her voice. "Let me go back one more time," she said. "I'll tell the doctors the truth, but I want to say goodbye to him first. Explain, somehow." Jason sighed but nodded. "Always the caretaker, Em. Just be careful. This isn't a stray cat you can nurse back to health." "I know. I'll be back soon." As Emily made her way back to the ICU, she tried to formulate what she would say to Dr. Mercer, how she would explain her deception, but all thoughts fled when she reached Alexander's room and found it in a state of controlled chaos. Alexander's eyes were open, not just fluttering, not just a momentary glimpse, but fully open, alert, confused, and unmistakably conscious. Doctors and nurses surrounded his bed, their voices a blur of medical terminology as they assessed his sudden awakening. Emily froze in the doorway, her heart pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this, not before she could explain. Dr. Mercer noticed her and waved her over urgently. "Mrs. Thornhill, he's awake. He's asking for you." Her legs felt like lead as she approached the bed. Alexander's gaze locked onto hers immediately, his brow furrowing in confusion. He tried to speak but coughed instead, his throat raw from the breathing tube that had been removed. A nurse offered him water, holding the straw to his lips. After a small sip, he tried again. "Who?" His voice was hoarse, barely audible. "Who are you?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Emily, waiting for her response. This was her moment to confess, to end the charade, before it went any further. She began, but Dr. Mercer interrupted. "Mr. Thornhill, this is your wife, Emily. She's been here since you were brought in." Alexander's confusion deepened. "I don't." He winced, raising a hand to his bandaged head. "I don't remember." Dr. Mercer's expression shifted, concern evident in the new creases around his eyes. "Memory loss is common with traumatic brain injuries," he explained to both of them. "Mr. Thornhill, what's the last thing you do remember?" Alexander closed his eyes, concentrating. "The office. Working late. Then, nothing." "You were in a car accident 3 days ago," Dr. Mercer explained gently. "You suffered significant head trauma and have been unconscious until now." Alexander's eyes opened again, finding Emily's. The confusion in them was tempered with something else, a searching, almost desperate quality that made her chest tighten. "We're married?" he asked, his voice stronger now. Before Emily could answer, Dr. Patel spoke from the doorway. "Perhaps we should give Mr. and Mrs. Thornhill a moment alone while we review these new developments." The medical team filed out, leaving Emily standing beside Alexander's bed, trapped in a lie that had just become infinitely more complicated. "I don't remember you," he said once they were alone, his voice a mixture of frustration and apology. Emily sat carefully on the edge of the chair beside his bed. "That's because there's nothing to remember," she said quietly. "We're not married. We've never even met before today." Alexander stared at her, processing her words. "Then why did they call you my wife?" "Because I lied to get into the hospital after visiting ours," Emily explained, the words tumbling out in a rush. "My brother was in an accident the same day you were. I overheard the staff talking about you having no family here, and I pretended to be your wife so they would let me in. I was going to see my brother and then leave, but then the doctors asked me to stay with you, to talk to you, and somehow you started responding to my voice." She expected anger, confusion, maybe even for him to call for the doctors. Instead, Alexander looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "You talked to me while I was unconscious?" Emily nodded, heat rising to her cheeks. "Yes. For hours. About nothing important. Just books I've read. Places I'd like to visit someday. My job at the café. I even told you that I was lying about being your wife. And I responded to your voice." "Apparently. Though I can't imagine why." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "What's your real name?" "Emily. Emily Parker." "That part was true then." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And your brother? Is he all right?" The question caught her off guard. Here was this man, just awakened from a coma, with a head injury and memory issues, asking about her brother's well-being. "Yes. Broken leg, some cuts and bruises, nothing like what you've been through." Alexander nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. "So, Emily Parker, who is not my wife, what do we do now?" Emily blinked, surprised by the calmness of his response. "I tell the doctors the truth, apologize profusely, and hope they don't press charges for fraud or whatever this counts as." "And if I asked you not to tell them yet?" "What? Why would you want that?" Alexander closed his eyes for a moment, fatigue evident in the lines of his face. "Because right now my head feels like it's been split open with an axe. I apparently can't remember significant portions of my life, and the only person who's shown any real concern for me as a person rather than a medical case is you, a complete stranger who sat with me all night talking about books." Emily didn't know how to respond to that. It was true that there had been no personal items in his room, no parade of worried friends or colleagues, Just doctors, nurses, and her. Your assistant is trying to get back from Tokyo, she offered. And I'm sure once news gets out that you're awake, people will come. People who work for me, he said flatly. Not people who care about me. There was such resignation in his voice, such acceptance of his solitude, that Emily felt a pang of genuine sadness for this man she didn't know. Surely that's not true, she said. You must have friends, family. My parents died years ago. I'm an only child. And friends? He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh that turned into a grimace of pain. I haven't had time for real friendships in years. The company has been my life. Emily thought of the café where she worked, of the regular customers she knew by name, of Sundays spent with Jason watching bad movies, of book club meetings with her small circle of friends. Her life wasn't glamorous, but it was full of genuine connections. That sounds lonely, she said before she could stop herself. Alexander met her gaze directly. It is. I just never admitted it until now. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Mercer entered, looking pleased but cautious. Mr. Thornhill, your vital signs are stronger by the minute. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Alexander replied. Close. It was an SUV that ran a red light, Dr. Mercer corrected with a small smile. We'll get you something for the pain. But first, I need to ask, how much do you remember about your life? Your work? Your relationship? Alexander glanced at Emily, something unspoken passing between them. Bits and pieces, he said carefully. I remember Thornhill Industries, my office. But there are gaps. Dr. Mercer nodded. That's to be expected. The fact that you remember anything at all is extremely encouraging. We'll run some more tests, but with time and proper care, many patients recover most or all of their memories. And if they don't? Alexander asked. Then you create new ones, Dr. Mercer said kindly. The brain is remarkably adaptable. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, rest is what you need most, along with continued support. He turned to Emily. Mrs. Thornhill, I can't overstate how important your presence has been in your husband's recovery. That connection may be even more vital now. Emily felt the weight of the doctor's words, the expectation in them. She should tell him the truth now, explain the deception before it went any further. But, before she could speak, Alexander reached for her hand. His touch was tentative, almost questioning, but there was a quiet desperation in it that silenced her confession. Emily has been my lifeline, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. I don't know what I'd do without her right now. After Dr. Mercer left, promising to return with pain medication and specialists, Emily gently extracted her hand from Alexander's. Why did you do that? She demanded in a whisper. I was about to tell him the truth. I know, Alexander said, his voice equally low. And I'm asking you not to. Not yet. But this is crazy. I can't pretend to be your wife. I'm not asking for forever, he assured her. Just a few days. Until I'm stronger. Until I can think clearly enough to deal with whatever comes next. Emily paced the small room, running her hands through her hair. This is insane! I don't even know you. But you sat with me all night, Alexander pointed out. You talked to me when no one else would. Why did you do that if you were planning to leave anyway? The question stopped her in her tracks. Why had she stayed? She could have checked on Jason and left, confessed to the nurse, faced whatever minor consequences might have come. Instead, she'd talked for hours to an unconscious stranger. I don't know, she admitted. It just seemed wrong for you to be alone. Alexander's expression softened. Then you understand why I'm asking this. I can't face all of this alone. The memory loss, the recovery, the inevitable business fallout. Not right now. Emily sank back into the chair beside his bed, conflict written across her face. What about my job? My brother? My life? You can still have all of that. Alexander assured her. "Just be here when you can. That's all I'm asking." "And what happens when your memory comes back? When you remember your real life, your real relationships?" A shadow crossed Alexander's face. "Then I'll face whatever truths come with those memories. But right now, all I have is this moment, this room, and you, the stranger who cared enough to stay." Emily knew she should refuse. This was beyond a white lie to get past hospital security. This was a full-scale deception that could have serious consequences. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to leave him alone, not when he'd just awakened, not when he was so vulnerable. "3 days," she said finally. "I'll give you 3 days. Then we tell the truth, no matter what." Relief washed over Alexander's features. "Thank you, Emily." A nurse arrived with pain medication, and soon Alexander was drifting into a medicated sleep. Emily used the opportunity to visit Jason again, explaining that she'd be staying at the hospital a bit longer. "You're doing what?" Jason asked, incredulous. This is beyond your usual helping strangers level of involvement. This is crossing into criminal territory." "It's just for a few days," Emily insisted, "until he's stronger. You should have seen him, Jason. He has no one." "That's not your problem. The man is a billionaire CEO. He has employees, lawyers, a whole company of people who depend on him. But no one who cares about him as a person," Emily said quietly. "Isn't that worse in a way? To be surrounded by people, but completely alone?" Jason studied his sister's face. "You always did have a soft spot for strays. Just promise me you'll be careful." This could backfire spectacularly. 3 days, Emily repeated. "Then it's over." When she returned to Alexander's room, he was still sleeping. Emily settled into the chair beside his bed, pulled out her phone, and began making arrangements. She called the café to request emergency family leave, set up grocery delivery to her apartment for her neighbor to accept, and arranged for Jason's friend to look after her cat. As she worked, she couldn't help glancing at Alexander's sleeping form. In sleep, the hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger, more vulnerable. She wondered what kind of man he was in his waking life. Was he the ruthless businessman portrayed in the local papers, or was there more to him? Evening came, bringing with it a stream of specialists, each conducting their own examinations and tests. Alexander endured them stoically, answering questions when he could, admitting to gaps in his memory when he couldn't. Through it all, Emily remained by his side, playing the role of devoted wife with increasing discomfort. "Mrs. Thornhill," one neurologist addressed her after his examination, "can you tell me if your husband has experienced memory issues before? Even minor ones?" Emily froze. How was she supposed to answer questions about a past they didn't share? Alexander came to her rescue. "Emily and I have only been married for 6 months," he said smoothly, "but I don't recall any memory problems before the accident." The lie tumbled from his lips so naturally that Emily almost believed it herself. 6 months. He'd created a history for them, a timeline she would need to remember. After the doctors left, Emily leaned close to Alexander's bed. 6 months, she whispered. "You couldn't have made it a year, given me some time to supposedly get to know you?" A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "I thought it was better to keep it recent. Explains why you're not in any of my photos or public appearances." "You've thought this through," Emily realized, not sure whether to be impressed or alarmed. "I've had plenty of time to think today," Alexander replied. And figuring out our story seemed like a good distraction from the pain. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a tall, elegantly dressed woman who burst into the room with the energy of a small tornado. "Alex! My God, you're actually awake!" she exclaimed, rushing to his bedside. "I got on the first flight from Tokyo when they called." Alexander looked momentarily confused before recognition dawned. "Vivian. My assistant. Executive assistant and de facto life manager," she corrected, then turned to Emily with a puzzled expression. "And you are?" Before Emily could stumble through an introduction, Alexander spoke. Vivian Walsh, meet Emily Parker, my wife. Vivian's perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. You're what now? We got married 6 months ago, Alexander continued smoothly. Small ceremony, very private. Vivian looked from Alexander to Emily and back again, disbelief evident in every line of her face. You got married. Without telling me. Me, who schedules your dental appointments and knows how you take your coffee. It was impulsive, Emily offered weakly. Vivian's eyes narrowed as she took in Emily's simple clothes, her lack of expensive jewelry or designer accessories. Impulsive. Right. And where exactly did you two meet? At her café, Alexander said before Emily could respond. The one across from the hospital. I stopped in for coffee one morning and, well, sometimes you just know. Emily felt heat creeping up her neck. He was creating an entire fictional romance for them on the spot. How very rom-com of you, Vivian said dryly. Alex, can I speak with you alone for a moment? Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Emily, Alexander replied, his tone firm despite his weakened state. Vivian sighed dramatically. Fine. The board is in panic mode. Stocks dropped 12 points when news of your accident hit. James Miller is trying to use this as an opportunity to push his agenda for restructuring, and the Morrison deal is hanging by a thread. Alexander closed his eyes briefly. The company will survive a few days without me, Vivian. Will it? Because right now the vultures are circling and your mysterious marriage isn't going to help matters. The press is already speculating about your condition, and once they get wind of this, she gestured toward Emily. My personal life is not corporate business, Alexander said, a hardness entering his voice that Emily hadn't heard before. It is when you're the face of Thornhill Industries, Vivian countered. When your stability, your judgment is what investors are banking on. Emily stood, suddenly feeling like an intruder. I should give you two some privacy to discuss business. No, Alexander said, reaching for her hand. Please stay. The gesture seemed to confirm something for Vivian. She straightened. Professionalism replacing her momentary lapse into emotion. I'll handle the board and the press for now, she said. But you'll need to make a statement soon, something to reassure everyone that you're on the road to recovery and still in control. Thank you, Vivian, Alexander said sincerely. I know I can count on you. After extracting a promise from Alexander to call her the next day, Vivian left, but not before giving Emily one last appraising look. She didn't believe a word of it, Emily said once they were alone. Probably not, Alexander agreed. Vivian knows me too well, but she'll keep our secret for now. How can you be sure? Because protecting me, and, by extension, the company, is her job. And she's very good at her job. Emily sank back into her chair, the full weight of their deception beginning to sink in. This is getting out of control. It's not just the hospital staff anymore. Now your company is involved, the press. I know, Alexander said, regret coloring his voice. And I'm sorry to involve you in all of this. If you want to walk away now, I wouldn't blame you. Emily looked at him, this man she barely knew, who had awakened from a coma to find a stranger claiming to be his wife, who was facing memory loss and corporate politics and medical uncertainty all at once. 3 days, she repeated, as much to remind herself as him. I promised you 3 days, and I'll keep that promise. Alexander's relief was palpable. Thank you, Emily. That night, as Emily dozed on the cot beside Alexander's bed, she was awakened by the sound of his voice, low and strained. No, don't. She sat up to find him thrashing slightly in his sleep, his face contorted in distress. A nightmare, or perhaps a memory trying to surface. Alexander, she said softly, moving to his bedside. Alexander, wake up. You're dreaming. His eyes snapped open, wild and unfocused for a moment, before settling on her face. Emily, he breathed, the tension leaving his body. I don't know where I was. It's okay, she soothed, instinctively reaching to smooth his hair back from his forehead. You're safe. You're at Mercy General Hospital. He captured her hand, holding it against his cheek for a moment. Thank you for being here. The simple gratitude in his voice made Emily's heart twist. She gently reclaimed her hand, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. Try to get some rest, she said, returning to her cot. But sleep was elusive for both of them now. In the dim light of the hospital room, with only the soft beeping of monitors to break the silence, they began to talk. Tell me about your life, Alexander asked. The real Emily Parker, not the imaginary Mrs. Thornhill. Emily hesitated, then decided there was no harm in sharing the truth. There's not much to tell. I work at Brood Awakening, the cafe across from the hospital. I live in a small apartment with my cat, Fitzgerald. Fitz for short. I read too much, drink too much coffee, and dream about opening my own bookstore cafe someday. Why haven't you? Money, mostly. Starting a business takes capital I don't have. What about loans, investors? Emily gave a soft laugh. Not everyone can walk into a bank and walk out with a business loan, Alexander. Especially not baristas with English literature degrees and no collateral. Call me Alex, he said, and I think you're underestimating yourself. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just being realistic. There was a pause, then Alex asked, What would you call it? Your bookstore cafe? Emily smiled in the darkness. Chapters and chai. Books on one side, cafe on the other, with comfortable chairs where people can sit and read all day if they want to. It sounds perfect, Alex said, and there was something in his voice, a wistfulness perhaps, that made Emily wonder what dreams he might have abandoned on his way to becoming a CEO. What about you? She asked. What would you be doing if you weren't running Thornhill Industries? Alex was quiet for so long that Emily thought he might have fallen asleep. Finally, he said, I used to want to design buildings. Not just office towers, but homes, community spaces, places where people really live. Architecture? Yes. I even started studying it in college before my father's health began to fail, and it became clear I would need to take over the company sooner rather than later. Do you regret it? Giving up that dream? Another long pause. I don't know. I never really let myself think about it. There was always the next deal, the next expansion, the next challenge. The company has done well under my leadership. That has to count for something. It counts for a lot, Emily assured him. But success and fulfillment aren't always the same thing. Spoken like someone who reads too much, Alex said, but there was warmth in his voice, not mockery. They continued talking as the night deepened around them, sharing bits and pieces of their lives, finding unexpected common ground despite their different worlds. Emily told him about growing up with Jason after their parents died in a car accident when she was 18, about putting her brother through college before pursuing her own education. Alex shared memories of his childhood, of summers spent at his grandfather's cabin in the mountains, of the joy he'd found in sketching buildings long before he understood architectural principles. Dawn was breaking when they finally fell silent, both drifting toward sleep. But before consciousness slipped away entirely, Emily heard Alex murmur, I'm glad it was you, Emily Parker. Of all the people who could have pretended to be my wife, I'm glad it was you. She was too close to sleep to respond, but the words followed her into her dreams, carrying with them a warmth that had nothing to do with the hospital blankets and everything to do with the unexpected connection forming between them. The second day of their unusual arrangement began with a flurry of medical staff performing morning rounds. Emily stepped out of the room to give them privacy, using the opportunity to call the cafe and check on Jason. When she returned, she found Alex sitting up in bed, looking markedly better than the day before. The doctors say I'm making remarkable progress, he told her, a hint of genuine surprise in his voice. Apparently, my recovery rate is exceeding their expectations. Emily smiled, setting her bag on the chair. That's wonderful news. They're talking about moving me to a regular room tomorrow, possibly discharging me by the end of the week if the improvement continues. Emily's smile faltered slightly. Their 3-day agreement suddenly seemed very short. Once Alex left the hospital, their paths would naturally separate. The thought brought an unexpected pang. That's really fast, she said, trying to keep her tone light. You must be relieved. Before Alex could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Mercer entered, accompanied by a woman Emily didn't recognize. Mr. Thornhill, Mrs. Thornhill, he greeted them. This is Dr. Rachel Chen, our head of neuropsychology. She'd like to do some cognitive assessments today if you're feeling up to it. Alex nodded, though Emily could see tension in his shoulders. Of course. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her manner professional but kind. These tests will help us understand the extent of your memory loss and cognitive function. It's nothing to worry about. Just some standard assessments. Mrs. Thornhill, your presence might be helpful for some portions. Emily nodded, her stomach tightening. She knew almost nothing about Alex's life. How was she supposed to help with memory assessments? For the next hour, Dr. Chen led Alex through a series of tests, identifying objects, recalling sequences, answering questions about general knowledge. He performed well on most, showing no signs of cognitive impairment beyond the memory gaps. Then came the personal questions. Mr. Thornhill, can you tell me your home address? Dr. Chen asked. Alex recited it without hesitation. And when is your birthday? September 17, 1985. Dr. Chen nodded, making notes. Mrs. Thornhill, when did you and your husband meet? Emily froze, then remembered Alex's story from the previous day. At my café, brewed awakening. About a year ago. And when did you get married? 6 months ago, Emily said, hoping her voice sounded natural. It was a small ceremony. Very private. Dr. Chen smiled. Where was your honeymoon? Emily's mind raced. Alex hadn't covered this part of their fictional history. We haven't had one yet, she improvised. We were planning to go to Italy this summer, but with work schedules, and now the accident. I see. Dr. Chen turned back to Alex. Mr. Thornhill, do you remember your wedding day? Alex's expression was carefully neutral. No. That's one of the gaps. What about your first date? Any memory of that? A slight smile touched Alex's lips. She spilled coffee on my shirt. I was supposed to have a meeting with investors, but I canceled it to have lunch with her instead. Emily stared at him, impressed and unnerved by how easily the fiction flowed from him. He was creating memories they'd never shared, with such conviction that she almost believed them herself. Mrs. Thornhill, can you share a favorite memory from your relationship? Something meaningful to both of you? Emily took a deep breath. Two could play at this game. Last winter, there was a massive snowstorm that knocked out power across the city. Alex came to my apartment because it still had heat. We ended up building a fort of blankets and pillows in my living room and reading to each other by candlelight. She glanced at Alex, finding him watching her with an unreadable expression. It was the first time I really saw him. Not the CEO, just the man. Dr. Chen nodded, seemingly satisfied. These shared memories are important anchors. Mr. Thornhill, even if you can't recall them now, hearing them may help trigger your own recollections. After completing a few more assessments, Dr. Chen left them alone. As soon as the door closed, Emily turned to Alex. I can't believe we just did that. We lied to a doctor, multiple doctors. You were quite convincing, Alex said, a note of admiration in his voice. The snowstorm, the blanket fort. I almost wished it had happened. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. It just came to me. I needed something that felt real. It did, Alex assured her. Very real. Their conversation was interrupted by another knock. This time it was Vivian, carrying a laptop and several folders. Sorry to intrude on the lovebirds, she said, her tone making it clear she still didn't believe their marriage. But we have fires that need putting out, Alex. For the next hour, Emily watched as Alex transformed. Gone was the vulnerable patient, replaced by a sharp, decisive executive. Even from his hospital bed, he navigated complex business issues, issued directives, and reassured nervous board members via video call. His voice took on a different cadence. Authoritative, confident, brooking no argument. This was Alexander Thornhill, CEO, the man the world knew. Emily found herself fascinated by the contrast between this commanding presence and the reflective man who had shared his abandoned dreams of architecture in the darkness of night. When Vivian finally packed up to leave, she hesitated at the door. "The press has gotten wind of your marriage," she told them. "I've managed to keep them at bay for now, but they're persistent. You might want to prepare a statement." After she left, Emily paced the room, anxiety building. This has gone too far. The press? Statements? Alex, we need to end this now. You're right, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. It was selfish of me to ask you to maintain this charade. I'll tell Dr. Mercer the truth today. Emily stopped pacing, suddenly uncertain. Wait, what will happen when you do? To you, I mean? Medically? Nothing, I imagine. They'll still treat me. Though they might assign a psychiatric evaluation, he added with a wry smile. And professionally? If this gets out, that you pretended to be married, how will it affect your company? Alex was quiet for a moment, considering. It won't look good. The board already questions my judgment sometimes. They think I take too many risks. This would give them ammunition. Emily sat on the edge of his bed, concern etched on her face. Is your position really that precarious? Not precarious exactly, but there's a faction led by James Miller that's been pushing for a more conservative approach. Less innovation, more focus on immediate returns. Alex's expression hardened. They'd use this to undermine projects I care about. Community development initiatives, sustainable building designs. Things that matter beyond the bottom line. Emily thought about the passion she'd heard in his voice when he'd spoken of architecture, of creating spaces for people. Those projects must represent the part of him that still held onto that dream. One more day, she said finally. We agreed on 3 days. Let's stick to that. Give yourself one more day to recover, to prepare for whatever comes next. Relief washed over Alex's face. Thank you, Emily. The rest of the day passed in a strange domestic rhythm. Emily read aloud from a novel she'd brought, occasionally pausing to discuss the characters or plot. They shared lunch from the hospital cafeteria, both agreeing it was remarkably terrible. In the afternoon, Jason visited, eyeing Alex with suspicion until the three of them fell into a surprisingly easy conversation about classic movies. As evening approached, a nurse informed them that Alex would be moved to a regular room the following morning. Your recovery really is remarkable, Mr. Thornhill, she said cheerfully. Dr. Mercer says it's one for the medical journals. After she left, Emily turned to Alex. You heard her. You're doing great. Tomorrow, you move to a regular room. We tell everyone the truth. And you continue your miraculous recovery without any fake wives. About that, Alex said slowly, I've been thinking. What if we didn't tell them tomorrow? Emily stared at him. What? But we agreed. I know, and I'm not asking you to continue the charade indefinitely. Just until I'm discharged. A few more days at most. Alex, no. This was supposed to be temporary, just until you were stronger. You're stronger now. Physically, yes, but there's still so much uncertainty. He met her gaze directly. Emily, I'm scared. The memory gaps, the business pressures, the isolation. It's all still there. When I leave this hospital, I'll be returning to a life I'm not sure I want anymore, one I'm not sure I can handle alone. The raw honesty in his admission caught Emily off guard. This wasn't the commanding CEO she'd witnessed earlier, but the man beneath that carefully constructed facade. "You won't be alone," she said gently. "You have Vivian, your company, doctors, who will continue to monitor your recovery." "That's not the same as having someone who sees me," Alex said quietly. "Really sees me." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning Emily wasn't ready to examine. She stood, needing physical distance from the intensity of the moment. "I can't pretend to be your wife indefinitely, Alex. I have my own life, my own responsibilities." "I know. And I would never ask that of you. Just until I'm discharged. Then we'll tell everyone it was a misunderstanding, that in my confused state, I mistook our relationship." Emily turned to look at him. This man, who had somehow in the span of just 2 days become important to her in ways she couldn't quite define. "I need to think about it," she said finally. That night, unable to sleep on her cot, Emily slipped out of the room and went to visit Jason. He was awake, watching a late-night talk show with the sound muted. "Trouble in paradise?" he asked when she entered. Emily sank into the chair beside his bed. "He wants to extend our, quote, marriage until he's discharged." Jason raised an eyebrow. "And let me guess, you're actually considering it." "I don't know what to do, Jason. He's so vulnerable right now. Not physically. He's recovering quickly. But emotionally. He has this whole life, this massive company, all these responsibilities, and no one who really knows him, who cares about him as a person." "Except you," Jason said, his tone gentler now. "You care." Emily looked down at her hands. "I barely know him. And yet here you are, losing sleep over his well-being." Jason reached for her hand. "Em, you've always had this gift for seeing people, really seeing them when no one else does. It's why you remember every regular's coffee order at the café, why your patients at the nursing home where you volunteered loved you so much. You connect. This is different. Is it? Or are you just scared because this time the connection goes both ways?" Emily looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means he sees you too, Em. The real you. Not just the barista or the kind stranger. And that terrifies you because it's been a long time since anyone really saw you." Emily wanted to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. Jason had always been able to see through her defenses, to articulate truths she wasn't ready to face. "I don't want to get hurt," she whispered finally. "I know," Jason said, squeezing her hand. "But sometimes the things worth having are the ones that come with risk." When Emily returned to Alex's room, she found him awake, sitting up in bed, sketching on a pad of paper the nurse had brought him. "I couldn't sleep," he explained when she entered. "Drawing helps clear my mind." Emily moved closer to see what he was working on. It was a building, but unlike the sleek, modern design she associated with Thornhill Industries, this was warm, inviting, with large windows and comfortable spaces clearly designed for people to gather. "What is it?" "Just an idea," Alex said, setting the pad aside. "Nothing important." But Emily saw the way his fingers lingered on the sketch, the care with which he placed it on the bedside table. It was important, perhaps more important than he was willing to admit. "Until you're discharged," she said quietly. "That's how long I'll stay. But we need a plan for ending this cleanly, with minimal damage to both of us." Relief and gratitude washed over Alex's face. "Thank you, Emily. And yes, we'll plan everything carefully." The next morning brought the promised move to a regular room, larger, with a window overlooking the hospital gardens and a small sitting area where Emily could rest more comfortably. Alex's improvement continued to impress his doctors, with Dr. Mercer now projecting a discharge date just 3 days away. "Your wife has been instrumental in your recovery," he told Alex during morning rounds. The power of human connection shouldn't be underestimated in medicine. After he left, Emily and Alex shared a look, the weight of their deception hanging heavier as more people praised their non-existent relationship. 3 more days, Emily said. "Then we end this, tell the truth, and go back to our real lives." Alex nodded, but there was something in his expression, a shadow, a hesitation, that made Emily wonder if returning to their separate lives would be as simple as they pretended. That afternoon, Vivian arrived with more business matters, requiring Alex's attention. As he worked, Emily excused herself to visit Jason again, grateful for the break from their shared fiction. She was returning to Alex's room when she overheard voices from inside. Alex and Vivian, their tones heated. "The board is getting impatient, Alex," Vivian was saying. "They want a statement, a clear timeline for your return. Miller is already suggesting an interim CEO arrangement. Tell them I'll be back next week," Alex replied, his voice firm. "Full capacity." "Will you?" "Because the doctors are saying your memory issues could persist for months." "My cognitive function is fine. I can run the company." Vivian's voice softened. "It's not just about capability, Alex. It's about stability. This marriage business, it's raising questions. You've always been so private, so focused on work. Then suddenly you have a secret wife no one's ever heard of? It doesn't add up." "My personal life is my own," Alex said, an edge to his voice that Emily hadn't heard before. "Not when it affects the company. And speaking as your friend, not just your assistant, are you sure you know what you're doing? This woman appears out of nowhere when you're at your most vulnerable. Emily is not taking advantage of me, if that's what you're implying. Then what is she doing? Because from where I'm standing, this whole situation makes no sense." There was a long pause before Alex spoke again, his voice quieter now. "She sees me, Viv. Not the CEO, not the Thornhill name or fortune. Just me. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my life?" Emily stepped back from the door, her chest tight. She shouldn't be eavesdropping, shouldn't be hearing these private thoughts. But Alex's words echoed her own feelings, the strange connection that had formed between them in such a short time. She waited a few minutes before entering, giving them time to finish their conversation. When she did, Vivian was packing up her things, her expression carefully neutral. "Emily," she acknowledged with a nod. "I was just leaving." After Vivian departed, an awkward silence filled the room. Emily busied herself arranging the flowers a nurse had brought in earlier, feeling Alex's eyes on her. "How much did you hear?" he asked finally. Emily turned to face him. "Enough to know that your board is concerned, that your position might be more precarious than you've let on." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "James Miller has been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. He thinks the company should focus exclusively on commercial properties, office buildings, shopping centers, high-end condos. The community projects, the affordable housing initiatives, the sustainable designs. He sees them as distractions, drains on resources. But they're important to you. They're the only parts of my job that still connect to why I wanted to be an architect in the first place, to create spaces that improve people's lives, not just their investment portfolios." Emily moved to sit in the chair beside his bed. "Then you can't let him win. You need to get back to work, show them you're still in control." "That's the plan," Alex agreed. "But until I'm discharged, until I can physically walk back into that office, he has the advantage." For the first time, Emily understood the full complexity of Alex's situation. It wasn't just about his recovery or their deception. It was about the future of projects that actually mattered, initiatives that could help people beyond the wealthy elite. "Then we'll make sure you get discharged as soon as possible," she said with newfound determination. "What can I do to help?" The gratitude in Alex's eyes was answer enough. The following days fell into a pattern. Mornings were for medical assessments, tracking Alex's continuing improvement. Afternoons often involved business calls and video conferences, with Emily tactfully stepping out to give him privacy. Evenings were theirs, for conversations that meandered from books to dreams, for quiet companionship as they watched the sunset through the hospital window. As Alex's discharge date approached, Emily found herself counting the hours with a mixture of relief and regret. Soon, their charade would end. Soon, they would return to their separate lives. He to his penthouse and boardrooms, she to her café and small apartment. The night before his scheduled discharge, they sat together by the window, watching as darkness fell over the city. "We should discuss tomorrow," Emily said, breaking the comfortable silence. "How we're going to handle the truth." Alex nodded, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about that. What if we tell everyone that the marriage was a misunderstanding? That in my confused state after waking from the coma, I mistook our relationship, and you, not wanting to distress a patient with head trauma, went along with it temporarily? That could work, Emily agreed. It puts the blame on your injury, not on any deliberate deception. Exactly. The doctors might insist on some additional psychiatric evaluation for me, but I can handle that. And what about the press? Your company? Vivian can manage a statement explaining the situation. It will be embarrassing, but ultimately just a quirky story about a confused CEO. The business implications should be minimal. Emily nodded, relieved that they had a solid plan. Yet as they continued to work out the details, she felt an inexplicable sadness settling over her. I should thank you, Alex said when they had finalized their approach, for everything you've done these past days. Most people wouldn't have stayed, wouldn't have cared. I'm not most people, Emily replied with a small smile. No, you're not. Alex reached for her hand, his touch gentle. You're extraordinary, Emily Parker. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. I'm just a barista, with a half-finished English literature degree and too many dreams. You're the woman who saved me, Alex said simply. Not just by being there when I woke up, but by showing me what I've been missing all these years. Real connection, genuine care, a life beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. Emily felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Alex, don't. Tomorrow we go back to our real lives. What if I don't want to? What if these days with you have been more real than anything I've experienced in years? The question hung between them, laden with possibilities neither was prepared to explore. You're still recovering, Emily said gently. Your emotions, your perspective, they're influenced by trauma, by gratitude, by the unusual circumstances. You think this isn't real? What I'm feeling? Emily looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I think we've been living in a bubble, Alex. A hospital room where the outside world barely intrudes. Tomorrow, that changes. Alex was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. We should stick to the plan. The distance that settled between them for the remainder of the evening felt colder than any they had experienced since his awakening. Emily retreated to the small couch that had replaced her cot, while Alex turned his attention to his tablet, reviewing business documents Vivian had sent over. As Emily drifted towards sleep, she told herself this was for the best. They were from different worlds, brought together by extraordinary circumstances. Tomorrow, those circumstances would end, and they would each return to where they belonged. It was the right thing, the sensible thing. So why did it feel like she was losing something precious before she'd fully understood its worth? Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.